Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live and we're national. Happy to be here with you. And our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're discussing a lot tonight. Of course, your phone calls are welcome on open phones across America. Open Phone America, one of my favorites. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you all, the American people. But today, Joe El Baboso Biden is no longer president. I'm still thrilled about that. Donaldus Magnus El Trompito is in the White House, and he's doing everything he said he was going to do one by one. He's going down his list. And what I find interesting is that Donald Trump seemingly is getting more done in the first day and a half or 2 days in office than Biden did in like forever, right? He's even had a press conference already. I'm loving what I'm seeing from President Trump. Big news that we saw last night. I was out in D.C. I'm back in the New York area. Thankfully, made it safely. And forgive me for not being on social media a lot, but I was driving. I was driving from D.C. back here, and it was longer than I thought, that ride. But anyway, what I was going to say was I was at a party last night. Big shout out to Dan Bongino and Rumble, Chris Pavlovsky. They had a great inaugural after party last night. The Trump team, Truth Social, Devin Nunes, just great people. And a lot of interesting people. Russell Brand was there, really nice guy. And at one point, I was talking to Cara Castronova. You might know her from Newsmax TV. And she is looking at her phone, and she's like, hey, look at this. It's a text from Jake Lang. And I was like, oh, I just had Jake Lang on our show. I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago. And she said, yeah, he just said he's out. Trump freed all the J6ers. So I said, oh, my gosh, Trump freed all the J6ers. And, of course, that pardon being given out to 1,500 January 6 people. And I'm glad to hear that those political prisoners, some were saying hostages, that they were set free. I'm happy to hear that. And in his press conference today, Donald Trump brought that up. Listen to this.
You would agree that it's never acceptable to assault a police officer.
Sure.
Right? So then if I can, among those you pardoned DJ Rodriguez. He drove a stun gun into the neck of a D.C. police officer who was abducted by the mob that day. He later confessed on video to the FBI and pleaded guilty for his crimes. Why does he deserve a pardon?
Well, I don't know. Was it a pardon? Because we're looking at commutes and we're looking at pardons. Okay, well, we'll take a look at everything. But I can say this. Murderers today are not even charged. You have murderers that aren't charged all over. You take a look at what's gone on in Philadelphia. Take a look at what's gone on in L.A., where people murder people and they don't get charged. These people have already served years in prison. And they've served them viciously. It's a disgusting prison. It's been horrible. It's inhumane. It's been a terrible, terrible thing. I also say this. You go to Portland, where they wrapped police officers, shot police officers. Nothing happened to anybody. You go to Seattle, where they took over a big chunk of the city and people died. Portland, a lot of people died. Wait a minute. And you go also, take a look at Minneapolis, because I was there and I watched it. And if I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city wouldn't even exist today. People were killed and nobody went to jail. So these people have already served a long period of time. And I made a decision to give a pardon. Joe Biden gave a pardon yesterday to a lot of criminals. These are criminals that he gave a pardon to. And you should be asking that question. Why did he give a pardon to all of these people that committed crimes? Why did he give a pardon to the J6 Unselect Committee when they burned and destroyed all documents which showed that they did what was wrong, not me? Wait a minute. Why did they give a pardon to all of his relatives, his brother who made millions of dollars, to all these different people. He gave pardons. That's the question you should be answering.
That is the question that we need to be answering. Why not? Why aren't we being told what's going on, right? I would love to know. I would love to know why these people haven't really, maybe Adam Schiff said it, but why haven't more of these pardonees from Joe Biden, for lack of a better word, why have they not said, you know what, look, I didn't do anything wrong, and I appreciate the president looking out for us because Trump is going to come after us. He's big, bad, orange man, bad. But I'm just going to say, look, I don't want it. I don't want the pardon. I mean, even from an optics perspective, I think it would make more sense, right? But no, they all seem to be pretty happy. At least if I haven't seen something, maybe I haven't seen it. I've been in the car for a few hours. But I got to tell you, this is very concerning, right? Trump said the reason he didn't do it for himself was because it would be an admission of guilt. Okay, got it. Makes sense to me. So why is it not good for all the Bidens, the whole Biden family? Why is there a pardon to America's doctor, Dr. Fauci? Imagine that. I mean, we all know why. We all know why. And it's something I've said on this show, and there's a lot of people that taunt me on Twitter and whatnot, saying that, that justice is coming. Really? Justice is coming, right? People are going to hang from nooses in Guantanamo Bay, I was told. Well, guess what? Joe Biden just pardoned all of them. How about that? Anyway, something that I want to get into, in addition to that, is a few things, right? International affairs, what's going on in Israel, the latest on that. I also want to talk about tariffs. What's the deal with the economy, the impact on the economy? There's plenty to get into, plenty to discuss. And I want to get to your calls. We have, we've got 2 segments at the end of this hour that I definitely want to do some calls on. I do have a lot to discuss and a lot of things to catch you up on because I was out for most of yesterday. And I want to thank Dom Giordano for holding down the fort for me. But I will do a lot of that coming back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. America, Rich Valdez, keeping you company till midnight, 1 a.m. in some areas. And I want to, again, give you a little recap. Over the weekend, I was in the swamp in D.C. It was actually a very lovely time. I would say it's lovely this time of year, but it was like 18 degrees, and it wasn't lovely. It was cold, really, really cold. And the streets were closed, and it was gridlocked, and man, I'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the events I attended was at the Heritage Foundation. And you guys know that I love to talk with folks at the Heritage Foundation. In fact, our resident economist on this program, E.J. Antoni, is from the Heritage Foundation. And I was there, and I thought I was going to bump into E.J. Antoni because I was at an event hosted by Art Laffer and Steve Moore. And I could not find E.J. Antoni, so I was a little upset at that because I want to get his reaction to something that I heard our new Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, say. Check this out.
We can't sell a Ford or GM in Europe. You go to Europe, you can't sell a Ford or GM. Why? There's 100% tariffs. How about in Japan? 100% tariffs. So do you think if we said, we're going to tariff you the way you tariff us, do you think they're going to allow Mercedes and all these Japanese companies and Porsches and BMWs to all of a sudden have 100% tariffs in America? Of course not. They're going to come and negotiate, and their tariffs are going to come down. And finally, Ford and General Motors are going to be able to sell in these places.
How's that sound?
Tariffs are an amazing tool by the president to use. He understands, don't tariff stuff we don't make, right? If we don't make it and you want to buy it, I don't want to put the price up there. It's pointless, but use tariffs to build in America. If we want to make it in America, tariff it, or if we're competing with it, tariff it. In 1948, we came up with something called the Marshall Plan, right? The world, Germany and Japan were destroyed after World War II, and we wanted to export our economy to them. So we made a rule. They could tariff us, and we won't tariff them. So they can
This is the
rebuild.
best explanation I've heard of.
So they can rebuild
Yeah.
their economy. When should that have ended? What do you think, 1980? Why 40 years are Japan and Germany and all of Europe still tariffing the heck out of our auto industry, tariffing the heck out of our furniture industry? Do you realize all your furniture you're buying that's made foreign? It seems crazy. Why? It's because they tariff us and we don't tariff them. It's so obvious.
It is so obvious, but so obvious we haven't done it. And we've talked about this on this program so many times. And like I said, I went all the way to the Heritage Foundation. I wanted to see E.J. Antoni, and he wasn't there. So we had to track him down, and we got him on the phone. E.J. Antoni, our resident economist, welcome back, sir.
Rich, good to be back. Listen, I am so sorry I missed you. I was actually supposed to be up on stage with my two buddies that you mentioned, Steve Moore and Art Laffer. I rolled my ankle terribly. I literally could not walk this weekend, so I missed the events Saturday, Sunday, and on Inauguration Day. I was so bummed, and I was especially bummed to miss you, but I'm glad to be on with you.
Likewise, brother, and I hope you heal quick, because those ankle rolls, they could last a while and come back when you least expect it. So anyway, it was a nice time, and again, my resident economist wasn't there, but I'll settle for the Trump guy and the Reagan guy. I'll take them. What are you going to do, right? And,
that's right.
But we heard our new Secretary of Commerce here talking about tariffs. And this has always been a hot button debate. I am no defender of tariffs. I believe that tariffs can increase the overall cost of everything if not applied strategically, appropriately, carefully, judiciously. I think there's a lot of nuance in this application, and I think President Trump understands it, and he does so, and he does it very effectively to as a negotiating tool and gets things done. And I think in some situations, like with China, it's the right thing to do, and because they truly, in my opinion, are an enemy of ours. And I don't know that we should have as much trade as we do with them. But those are my opinions. I want to get yours on this tariff situation, being that we've got President Trump back in the White House, and he's running on every cylinder.
Well, Rich, I think you make a lot of really, really good points there. And I got to say, I don't understand these economists who go on and on about how they are free trade, except they support things like income taxes and sales taxes. Those things are also taxes on trade. Too.
Right.
But why on earth do we say we're for free trade when it only comes to international trade? What about domestic trade? Why is it we're okay with taxing transactions with our fellow Americans, but we fight tooth and nail to not have to have any taxation when we're trading with foreigners? It just doesn't make any sense, especially when we're dealing with foreigners like you outlined there with China, foreigners who may not like us very much, or at least the leaders of their country don't like us very much. It doesn't make any sense at all. And if you look at the periods in our nation's history when we had the fastest sustained levels of economic growth, America's golden age, what Trump is talking about that he wants to bring us back to, that golden age saw all of government revenue essentially coming from tariffs. The income tax didn't even exist at that time. There had been a one-time temporary war measure. It was essentially ruled unconstitutional after the Civil War, and it wasn't until 1913 that you had a constitutional amendment. You actually had to change the Constitution to make the income tax possible. So, this idea that somehow tariffs are going to cause the economy to collapse, I'm sorry, the record of history just doesn't stand up to that. Now, I will say,
and I agree with that, too.
You,
I think that they have worked in the past, but like you said, prior to income tax.
Right, but fast forward to the early 1930s when Herbert Hoover, heaven help us, he and a bipartisan coalition in Congress pushed through the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act despite 1,000 economists taking out a very big advertisement in many New York City papers telling him not to do it because it would set off a global trade war. And because those tariffs were done not strategically like you were just describing, but it was a real scattershot. It was almost random. It encouraged a lot of other nations to also impose tariffs on the United States, essentially in retaliation. It also imposed tariffs on things where Americans had no alternatives. In other words, if they wanted to buy product X, they had to buy it from this one country that made it, and now Americans were stuck paying this tariff on top of it. So you had a tremendous cost passed on to American consumers because of how poorly these tariffs were put together, and it ended up exacerbating the Great Depression. So on the one hand, you had tariffs by McKinley that were done just exquisitely well, and I think Trump intends to replicate that like he did in his first term. And then you have tariffs which were done with no strategy at all, and it was a disaster.
I agree with that as well. And I think that these are nuances that are very, very important, because I look at the situation, and I don't slight Trump in any way, because I think he gets this better than most. And better than I do, for sure. But I also look at this and I think, I don't want to sit through a situation where I go to buy a paper product, and because we've hit Canada with something, they decide to hit us because we get a ton of our paper from there, and our trees and wood. And this could be representative of what you were just talking about, where it sparked a global trade war with retaliation. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case, because I think Trump's imposing tariffs very strategically, where it's to their benefit to say, I'd rather not. I'd rather not pay the tariff. Let me play ball with him. And I think that's where he differentiates himself from all the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that we got to place this in context, Rich. What I mean by that is one of the ideas that Trump has pushed for is let's get rid of some income tax, or whether it's corporate income tax, personal income tax, and replace it with revenue from tariffs. In other words, you may pay more for something, but you have more money in your pocket with which to afford it. On top of that, Trump is also talking about a massive, massive deregulatory agenda. We forget when it comes to manufacturing, and that includes paper manufacturing. Employers oftentimes pay a regulatory burden that's about $50,000 to $70,000 per employee. You wonder, why is it no one can afford to make anything here in the United States? It's because the regulatory burden is so gosh darn high. And so if you can get that down by cutting that red tape, all of a sudden the advantage that Canadian manufacturers have, whether it's in paper or anything else, that advantage all of a sudden goes away. Much of the reason why we export manufacturing to other parts of the world, what we call corporate inversion, that typically occurs less because of things like low wages, like the slave labor in China. It more so has to do with the incredible regulatory burden which we have inflicted upon ourselves here in the United States.
Really well put. Folks, we're on with E.J. Antoni, giving us the behind-the-scenes scoop that this is the stuff he went to school for, because I don't see all these things. I just look at the initial, and I unpack it with experts like him. That's why he's our resident economist here at America at Night with Rich Valdez. And, folks, if you want to chime in on the conversation, join the program, happy to do that. 833-482-5337, right? 482-5337. Making sure I know. 833-4-Valdez. I'm a little out of whack. I've been in the car forever and a day. And E.J. Antoni, let everybody know how they find you. We're going to come right back to you, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance to follow you.
Oh, best place to follow me is going to be on X. The handle there is @RealEJ_Antoni. Please look for the blue check, though. There's a bunch of crypto scammers impersonating the account. So look for that blue check. Yeah,
make sure you find E.J. Antoni. He's got the good stuff out there. And straight ahead, we're going to continue this discussion on tariffs, because there's talk about 25% tariffs on Mexico and what the fallout of that could be, or what the upside could be. And I think there's going to be a lot of upside. We're going to work through that with E.J. Antoni when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Donald Trump is vowing to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian trade with the U.S. starting February 1st. Some state reps from the North Country are hopeful businesses will relocate to the American side of the border.
You know, we've lost our manufacturing base. We've lost a big portion of our logging industry. I'm hoping it brings jobs to our region. We're pretty depressed up in the North Country.
Others worry an escalating trade war will drive up prices.
So the brewer buying aluminum cans from Quebec are going to pay more. They're going to raise their beer prices for their customers. Home builders are going to buy lumber, and the tariff's going to be raised on that softwoods, and that's going to make them charge the customer more to build their house. So at the end of the day, Jane and Joe consumer are going to take it in the teeth.
With the new deadline looming, Governor Kelly Ayotte told News 9, quote, "The president is working to secure a better deal for America, and I want what's best for our economy. Canada is one of New Hampshire's most important trading partners, and we cannot afford to damage our long-standing and mutually beneficial economic bond. I'm monitoring this closely and will work to ensure it does right by the Granite State." In Concord, Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
All right, so that's Adam Sexton, WMUR in New Hampshire. And I want to get your reaction to this. Our guest, again, is E.J. Antoni. He's with the Heritage Foundation. He's a terrific economist. He's the resident economist here on America at Night. Love the guy. He always has the best answers, best explained answers. And as economists go, one of the very few out there with great personality. I think they're all at Heritage, honestly. E.J. Antoni, welcome back.
Rich, thank you. I love these introductions. They just get better and better. So if you can just keep having me on, I can't wait for how good these are going to get. They're great already.
We're building. So you heard the report, and we talked a little bit about that, but that seems to be the concern, right? You've got tariffs for Mexico and Canada, and they're scheduled to be at 25% if they go through. Do you think my concern about lumber and paper products and the concern echoed in the report about aluminum? Do you think these are things that are going to materialize if a bluff is called, or do you think we get to a resolution here?
Well, I think we ultimately get.
All right, we're working on getting E.J. Antoni back. Obviously, the deep state. Zapping his phone line because they don't like what he had to say, but this is the question, right? And you've got a lot of people wondering this. And I've got my money's on El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. My question is not whether Trump's tariffs are going to work per se. My question is, will these governments play ball? Right? Are they going to start to be fair? Right? I think Trump aptly pointed out when he was president 4 years ago. And since that, we have these trade deficits that are unfair, right? That's really the bottom line. We're buying a bunch of stuff from these people, and they're not buying enough from us. So then let's make a deal. And if we're not going to make a deal, then here's my price. I think this is a very fair thing. The question becomes, does the Justin Trudeau, who's on his way out, does he try and play hardball? I can't see him doing that. But again, what do I know? Right. So, I mean, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that as well. And I'm really curious to see how it unfolds. But E.J. Antoni, your thoughts on whether we get retaliation from the new Prime Minister of Canada, or eventually they play ball?
Sorry about that, Rich. I think eventually they do play ball. And the reason is that if you get into any kind of trade war, you're going to throw Mexico and or Canada into a pretty bad recession, whereas here in the United States, it's basically going to feel like a speed bump under tread. It's not that big of a deal because it just doesn't make up trade with those countries, that is, doesn't make up a big enough portion of our economy. And so if you're one of those other countries, I don't think they're going to be willing to try to call Trump's bluff, because at the end of the day, he's not bluffing. He knows he holds all the cards. I mean, it's like saying you're
right.
Bluffing in Texas Hold'em and you have pocket aces. I hardly consider that bluffing. You have the winning hand. And so, again, might you have a temporary trade war, if you want to call it that? Sure, I could see that happening if those leaders really want to test the waters. But beyond something that's very short-lived, I mean, those countries just can't sustain a drawn-out trade war, and I think they know it.
Yeah, and I also think there's a political perspective to this where the folks that ousted Justin Trudeau, these guys are pro-Trump. They're pro-America. I have callers that call in from Canada that listen on a station in Vermont that spills into Canada, and they love Trump. They love America. They love the free market, and I think that they're the people that put this new leader. I don't know his name, who they're going to put up, but ultimately, I think the future prime minister in Canada is going to be playing ball. So I think this is a win. Now, what about Mexico?
You know, I think it's essentially the same deal. Their leader took a very, very belligerent tone when Trump first made this announcement, and it was literally only a few days later that they essentially acquiesced to a lot of his demands in terms of helping secure the southern border. And Trump wasn't even president yet, and they were already starting to bend the knee. So I can only imagine how much more they're going to be willing to play ball now that he is actually in charge, and now that the clock is ticking before he can just, with the stroke of a pen, impose a lot of additional costs on the Mexican government, on the Mexican people.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think that's the right perspective. I really do. And I just, for the sake of everybody listening, when you look at the headlines, I mean, I'll just go through a few with you, just for kicks and giggles. Bloomberg, Trump plans to impose 25% tariffs on Mexico by February 1st. CNBC, Trump says he's thinking of imposing 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. NBC News, Trump not expected to carry through on day one tariff threats. You see how the stories change? Detroit Free Press, Trump's 25% tariffs on Canada will wreck Michigan's economy. Then you get to CNN. Trump threatens 25% punting day one pledge. And they continue, right? And I think this is how the media operates. And, of course, these are political things, not economic things. But that plays into it because people start, walking on eggshells, thinking, oh, my gosh, we're going to have a trade war. We're going to die. I'm not going to get toilet paper. It's going to be the end of the world. And while there are historical, times where you could point to and say this actually happened, the reality is those aren't these times. And like you said, we're holding all the chips here.
Exactly. And, we have to remember that all of these folks said the exact same thing the first time Trump was president, and when he imposed tariffs on China, they said the price of Chinese goods are going to go through the roof. Well, the things on which Trump imposed those tariffs, 81 cents on the dollar in terms of the additional costs from tariffs were actually paid for by Chinese producers. They ate the cost of the tariff. Prices only rose to American consumers about 19 cents on the dollar. Part of that was because the Trump administration was very strategic about what they chose to tariff. These were things on which Americans had other alternative buying options. So you didn't have to just buy these steel products from China. You could buy steel products made in America. You could buy steel products made from other countries overseas, like Sweden. That was a big source during the first Trump administration. And so China couldn't afford to pass all of the costs on because they would have lost a ton of market share. And I think you're going to see exactly the same thing this time around. There's a lot more factors at play here. We have things that we like to call elasticities in economics. You have different valuations in terms of currency exchanges where they will go up and down. So at the end of the day, this idea that somehow all tariffs are always under all circumstances passed on to American consumers, neither theory nor the record of history stands up to that. In fact, it shows exactly the opposite.
Really well put. Now, E.J. Antoni, I know we're scheduled for this time, but I have a question for you because I always like to get this take from you. And this is really, just so you know, these are closeted digs at friends of mine. Friends of mine that beat me up all the time telling me, you defend the dollar too much, BRICS is the way to go. And I tell them, you guys are commies, you guys are in Putin's back pocket, and I'm not going with BRICS. But we've seen Putin sort of relent a little bit with his push for BRICS. Trump saying now that there may be a sanction coming their way if they don't play ball on negotiating with the war. And Trump's made a lot of comments about strengthening the dollar, which I think is appropriate for the American president. What's your forecast, if you dare to give one, on the American dollar and gold prices and how it interrelates with BRICS?
Well, unfortunately, I think the dollar is going to continue weakening against gold. However, I do think there's a good chance that the dollar is actually going to strengthen against a lot of other currencies. In other words, yes, the dollar is going to continue to lose value. A lot of that has to do with the inflationary pressures that are already baked into the cake because of all the mistakes that happened last year. These price changes aren't instant. They take a while to play out. Inflation didn't hit a record high under Biden until 18 months after he had already started his spending spree. So again, it takes time. But the fact that the dollar is gaining against other currencies means we're basically the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry right now. In other words, other currencies are depreciating even faster. Now, in terms of Putin, real quick, some people may think he's evil, he's a dictator, and that may or may not be the case. But one thing he is he's pretty darn smart. That's why he has been stockpiling gold faster than almost any other country in the world over the last couple of years. It's to protect his currency against devaluation and to protect it against devaluation from other currencies, because Russia holds a lot of other currencies in reserve. And I think that's something that the United States needs to also be doing. We need to have a greater reliance on gold in terms of our own reserves.
I read recently that Russia also has a lot of dollars in as part of their reserve.
Well, they did. Unfortunately, we made the boneheaded decision to confiscate a lot of those reserves. And look, this is not a defense of Putin or anything that he does.
Sure.
But the problem here is the fact that once you violate the sacrosanct nature of the dollar, and you all of a sudden can say, no, your dollars that you rightfully purchased, those aren't yours anymore. Now every other nation in the world is wondering if it can happen to them.
Right.
We actually gave the BRICS nation the biggest gift with that. China has been going around the world saying, look what happened to Russia. It can happen to you too. And that's why they've gotten many nations in South America to sign on to these bilateral trade agreements where they no longer use the dollar in international exchange. We have to remember that's a huge absorber of dollars floating around the world. And if you no longer have international trade to absorb all of the dollars that we've been sending abroad, they're all going to come back here. That's 70 years worth of deficits that will all come pouring back into the United States to compete with Americans for buying goods and services here at home. If you want to see a real inflation, that'll do it. That's Weimar Republic kind of stuff we're talking about.
Well, part of my mission in life, in addition to trying to be entertaining and informative on the radio, is to try and send the message that I think we need a gold-backed dollar so that we can compete with BRICS and we can stay dominant in the currency space. And I know a lot of people have different opinions about it, and you've shared yours many times. But as of today, have any of your thoughts changed? What do you think? Do you think we're any closer to getting there?
I actually think we are a little bit closer to getting to a gold standard. And the reason I say that, Rich, is there's an increasing amount of talk of essentially issuing long-term treasury bonds, you're talking about 50 years, that have what you might call a gold call option attached to them. In other words, the holder of these bonds would have the option on maturity to not take purchase in dollars, but instead to take purchase in gold. And what that does is it provides you essentially perfect inflation protection. And if investors have that kind of confidence, it offers the Treasury a lot of benefits, such as I don't demand a very high interest rate, a very high yield on those Treasury bonds anymore because I'm confident I don't have to worry about the bond losing value from inflation. Because if the government tries to do that, it gives them no benefit. They're just going to have to pay out more dollars. The dollars are worth less, but they'll pay out the exact same value in terms of gold.
Right.
And so, again, if you give investors that kind of confidence, you can reduce the interest costs on the debt, which right now are running $1.2 trillion a year. And once you do that, you have all of a sudden a gold-backed bond, essentially. That's a great jumping-off point to get to a generally gold-backed currency.
Outstanding. E.J. Antoni, that's all the time I got, but I want to thank you for being here. Our resident economist, E.J. Antoni from the Heritage Foundation. Follow him on X at Real E.J. Antoni. Brother, I appreciate it, and I hope to have you back real soon.
Well, Rich, I would love that, and thank you again for having me.
You bet. Folks, we're coming back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I wanted to continue kind of bringing you up to speed on some of the stuff that I've been doing, because I had a good time in Washington. I saw a lot of people that have been on this program that, I got a chance to catch up with in real life. And earlier today, I had received an invitation to visit the Hungarian embassy. And His Excellency, the ambassador, was gracious, gave some very, very, very kind remarks. And he was, and not kind to me, kind to the United States. Right? He was saying how Europe needs to follow the model of the United States. And at one point they were chanting, "We need to make Europe great again," as they were praising President Trump's leadership and his commitment to America. And it was really a proud moment for me, right? I was in a room filled with a bunch of people at the Hungarian embassy in Washington, D.C., and they were all on board for America, right? They were all America first. And it was really cool to see that. And it's not the first time I'd seen it. I'd seen it when I visited Budapest, Hungary. And they were also very pro-Trump, because they realized Europe gets better if the United States gets better. And as the leader of the West, as leader of the free world. And there was a particular focus on anti-Semitism and how it continues to grow and continues to grow. And I bumped into a friend, Ellie Kohanim. She's been on this program, and she's a former United States Deputy Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. She worked for the State Department, appointed by President Trump to be the U.S. Deputy Special Envoy. And this is her life mission, right, is to, ending anti-Semitism and understanding it, studying it, explaining it, etc. And, we had a brief conversation, and it made me realize that this is a big problem that continues. And our incoming ambassador, Elise Stefanik, has a lot on her plate. So when we come back, I want you to hear a little bit about what Elise Stefanik had to say today. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
If you look at the anti-Semitic rot within the United Nations, there are more resolutions targeting Israel than any other country, any other crisis combined. And we have significant national security councils, the anti-Semitism, whether it's UN Women failing to condemn Hamas's terrorist attack and terrorist regime against innocent civilian women, using rape and targeting women specifically, taking them hostage.
That is Elise Stefanik, United States ambassador to the United Nations. And what's interesting here is they continue to press her every way and every how they can. Now they're saying that Elon Musk made a gesture, a salute during the confirmation hearing that somehow was fascistic, or dare I say even anti-Semitic. They're saying that it was a Nazi salute. I mean, the things that they come up with. And this went on during the questioning. We're going to get into a little bit more of that, but I got to tell you, it's like they've got nothing left, so they're just grasping at straws. Unbelievable. And doing it all in the name of hating Jews, obviously. Give the Jews a break. Folks, we're coming right back. I got more to come straight ahead. We're going to talk about the Jews, what's going on there, and a whole lot more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. It is Tuesday night. We are live. We're national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys in this hour of the program because there's a lot going on. So earlier I mentioned, Biden and his preemptive pardons for all of his family. And of course, Trump giving out the January 6th pardons. And it's been pardon talk. But I want to refresh everybody's memory. And you may have heard this at some point today. But just to bring everybody back into the fold, where Joel Baboso Biden told Jake Tapper on Fake News CNN back in 2020 that he would not hand out any preemptive pardons. Listen to this.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons, nor are you going to see in our administration the approach to making policy by tweets. It's just going to be a totally different way in which we approach the justice system.
No preemptive pardons from Joel Baboso Biden. But as we know, he pardoned Fauci. He pardoned everybody on the January 6th committee. Why would you do that? Okay, he says it's because Trump's going to go buck wild and politically persecute them. Projectionism at its best. However, something that I think is worthy of note is that earlier I said in the previous hour, I said, why aren't they rejecting these? Well, guess what? Jamie Raskin did say it. I had not gone through all of my cuts on the cut list. Jamie Raskin says that he's looking to talk to a lawyer to see whether you actually accept or reject one of these pardons. Sounds like he's full of crap, but at least he said something. Listen to this.
Did you accept your pardon, and would you advise your staff to accept theirs?
Well, I'm not even sure that's part of the process. I'm trying to connect up with a lawyer to figure out whether you accept or reject a pardon, because one interpretation I found from some cases is that a pardon is like an executive order or a legislative enactment. It's just public law, and so you don't have the choice whether or not to accept it or reject it. I know there's some contrary authority, so I'm going to try to figure that out and figure out, what to do. I have felt, as I've said for, many weeks about this now, that we are safe with the speech and debate clause, which protects us against both federal and state criminal prosecution as well as civil lawsuits. This gives us obviously an added fortification against any efforts by Trump and his administration to do what they've been talking about with Liz Cheney and with Benny Thompson, which is, they've been concocting this whole theory about how Liz Cheney somehow suborned perjury or interfered with the right to counsel, which is complete nonsense and has been refuted and debunked by the Democrats on the House Administration Committee. But they've obviously been trying to torture out some reason to try to prosecute people, and President Biden basically put it to bed.
He put it to bed. He didn't put anything to bed. He put himself to bed. Anyway, this whole thing is funny. But I think, honestly, all of these politicians, I think Dr. Fauci should be the first one out there to say, well, it's me, the Fauci, and I wanna thank President Biden for protecting me against the deep state of Donald Trump and the Republicans. But I want to say, honestly, I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't know if I need a pardon, right? Why wouldn't he say something like that? I would. If I got a pardon, I'd be like, well, listen, thanks for the pardon, brother. El Trumpito, thank you so much for the pardon, but I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need a pardon. Now, whether I say it or not, I don't think it matters. I have one. It's in writing. It's been given. So, boom, I'm exempt from these federal crimes, right? But I think I should say something. I don't think I should just walk away and be like, nah, we good. I'm all right. I just think that whole thing is out of control. Now, every now and again, I don't love to give this guy a lot of airtime. I really don't. But every now and again, I like to talk about the globalists, right? The World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. I got to work on my Schwab accent. But he sounds like Dr. Evil. He's very, very funny looking, looks like a space cadet sometimes. I'm guessing, like an evil genius type. You know him. And I want to get into that a little bit later, so I just want to put that out there. But I want to continue this conversation that we left off with Elise Stefanik and the anti-Semitism, because there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there. And it seems to, vacillate, right? It seems like it gets a little better, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now there's all this talk about Elon Musk, and was he doing Sieg Heil on the stage at the rally, and was there a salute, and all this stuff that came up in the confirmation hearing. I got to tell you, I think this stuff is childish. I mean, I think you should take anti-Semitism very seriously. And I'm glad to see that even some of the globalists are saying that it's bad if he did that. But they're saying it's bad if he did that, not bad that others do that, right? At least that's my assessment of it. So I want to talk about anti-Semitism. I want to get the scoop on everything that's going on. And to do that, I want to speak with former advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and she's going to be joining us in just a little bit. So until then, make sure you call in if you have something to say on this program. Happy to talk with you. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Precious moments between 3 daughters and their mothers. New video showing the hostages reuniting with their families. Doron Steinbrecher, Romy Gonen, and Emily Damari. The 28-year-old British-Israeli opening up about her hostage ordeal, saying she has come back to life.
Emily is in high spirits on the road to recovery. As you will have seen last night, she is an amazingly strong and resilient young woman.
The newly released hostages are expected to remain in hospital for some time, yet more captives are expected to be freed on Saturday, but that's only if the ceasefire holds.
John Paul Gonzo for 10 News First, Tel Aviv.
That is a report again from Australia, of all places, about the hostages. And I want to get some reaction to this and a little bit of analysis on it from somebody who knows what's going on. And she has been updating us all along. She's kept her ear to the ground. Ruthie Blum, former advisor in the office of Benjamin Netanyahu, award-winning columnist, and senior contributing editor at JNS, the Jewish News Service. Ruthie Blum, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Rich.
My pleasure. And I want to get, I guess your initial reaction to the hostages that have been released, the number of hostages, how that is progressing, and your thoughts on it.
Well, first of all, everybody wept with joy at the sight of those 3 young women being reunited with their families back to Israel. Yes. All Israelis had come to know them almost personally, know their photos and their mothers, and also all the rest of the hostages. We've become to feel like their family. Also, most Israelis have a direct connection to some hostages, and we all have a connection to soldiers fighting in Gaza to return those hostages, to free them, rescue them, some of which we succeeded in rescuing, and some of them we had released in a previous swap, what they call a swap. I hate calling it that because it's releasing innocent people for bloodthirsty terrorists. But we did that last November and a year ago November. So now we're left with 94 hostages in the dungeons of Gaza. 4 more are expected to return on Saturday. Now, the trouble is the deal is disastrous, despite the joy of seeing those young women at home. And it's disastrous because by the end of 6 weeks, we will have, if the deal goes through as it's supposed to, we will have retrieved or returned 33 hostages and more than 1,000 bloodthirsty terrorists from Israeli jails.
Unbelievable. And obviously the price was going to be steep, right? If they were going to play ball, I knew that they were going to ask for more than they deserved because these people should never have been held in the first place. Now, there's a lot of talk about Hamas. I guess critics of Netanyahu's are saying things like he didn't eradicate them completely and they're going to come back. I agree that whether you eradicate them completely or not, they're going to come back because I think hate has a way of rearing its ugly head every so often. But what are your thoughts on the current state of affairs in Gaza?
Well, the trouble is, it is true that Netanyahu has not yet eradicated Hamas. First of all, Hamas is a proxy of Iran. So when you're looking at the bigger picture, you're talking about the head of the octopus, which is Iran, and these other proxies. There's the Houthis in Yemen and the Iraqi militias and the Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, and we've been getting it on all fronts. Now, the trouble is that the Biden administration really tied Israel's hands throughout the war, going as far as to withhold crucial weapons we needed. For example, D9, I don't know if you'd call them bulldozers exactly. You know, it's D9 military vehicles that were crucial, and also certain bombs, things like that, and also putting pressure, constant pressure on Israel not to do this, not to go in here, not to kill too many Palestinians, not to, don't. And had that not been the case, had Biden from the beginning been clearly on Israel's side against this terrorist monster, I think things would have turned out differently. So, and also what's worrisome is because we were about to finish the job, this deal came along and again halted it. And again, Hamas was showing its muscles and flexing its muscles for the cameras while the 3 hostages were released. We saw pictures of Hamas terrorists all over the Red Cross vans, and Gazans gathered around to jeer and cheer and be nasty as those poor women were being sent home. So obviously the threat has not been eradicated.
Now, I want to get your thoughts on how this will continue to develop. Obviously, 3 hostages have been released, thank God. But their claim was that they had 35, right, or something like that, that were still living. What do you expect to occur? How do you expect this to continue?
Well, let's put it this way: the first phase, it's called, is the 6-week period during which 33 are to be released. And by the way, we don't know how many of those 33 will be living or dead. Let me make that clear. That's in 6 weeks. And a 6-week ceasefire does so much damage because it enables Hamas to be regrouping, and it's also recruiting new terrorists, etc. That's one thing. But the second phase is even, let's say, more precarious, because the second phase is where more negotiations take place And Hamas is supposed to demilitarize Gaza. Now, the chances of that happening, of Hamas willingly putting down its weapons, I would say is below zero. And so the question is, then what do we do? But my bigger question is, what happens during the 6 weeks if Hamas violates the deal, but only slightly? Does that mean that Israel will go in again, bomb again, send in more troops? I don't know. But, Hamas is very tricky. And one thing they could do, here's an example. On Saturday, they're supposed to release 4 hostages. Well, what if they release 3? Does that constitute a violation? You see, that's the trouble. Now, my concern is the incoming Trump administration, because on the one hand, when President Trump had his first round as president before the Biden administration, there was no greater friend to Israel in the White House, ever. And now we also see a similar administration taking shape with amazingly pro-Israel appointees. But alongside that, we see a couple of worrisome picks. One of them being the envoy who went to Qatar to negotiate this deal or to seal the deal, and was very chummy with the Qataris. Yes, Steve Witkoff, and he was very chummy with the Qataris, and he almost made it sound like Hamas and Israel are the same, negotiating like a real estate deal. So that was very worrisome. So the question will be, when Trump last week threatened that if the hostages weren't returned by the time of his inauguration, that all hell would break loose. And then the all hell that broke loose was really a whimper, because only 3 hostages were returned by the time he was inaugurated, and we don't know what's happening. And he's talking a lot about, peace in the Middle East and peace with Saudi Arabia, between Israel and Saudi Arabia, before the war has been finished. So I'm concerned. However, the Biden administration was such a disaster that I think this can only be an improvement.
Folks, we're on with Ruthie Blum, former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu and senior contributing editor at JNS. And Ruthie Blum, I want to continue this conversation with you straight ahead. But, folks, I want to remind you that everything is streaming at richvaldez.com. If you miss any part of this, or if you're listening to a radio station that only carries 2 hours, not all 3 hours, or 1 hour, or whatever, if they're not carrying every hour of the program, you can get every hour of this program, every interview at richvaldez.com, and you could listen to it from absolutely anywhere. So check that out when you get a chance. And make sure that you keep it locked right here. And our phone number, if you want to join us, we're coming right back. Your calls are coming up, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Now, straight ahead, I want to get Ruthie Blum's reaction to the international reaction of what happened with Elon Musk. Apparently, he made a gesture, and they think it's a Nazi salute. We're going to get reaction to that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez with our guest, Ruthie Blum.
Glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
I'm Peter Wolodarski from Sweden, Dagens Nyheter. Last night we saw Elon Musk raising his hand at the festivities when the new president was inaugurated. What is your comment to that?
So, on the question of the dealing of Elon Musk, I had a lot of things to comment in the past because he was discussing a lot about Europe. And just to repeat what I already said, we have the freedom of speech in Europe and in Germany. Everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. And that is what I would like to repeat again.
That is Olaf Scholz. He is the German chancellor. He's speaking at the World Economic Forum today regarding this salute, this alleged salute by Elon Musk, saying they won't accept this extreme right position. But what I find interesting about all this is that they're pretty fascistic in and of themselves, and nobody should support this type of thing. I feel like they're going a little extra hard on Musk when they probably ought not to. But I want to get some reaction from former advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Ruthie Blum. She's with JNS now, and she's terrific. She's got a great podcast, too. Ruthie, tell us your thoughts on what Chancellor Olaf Scholz said and about this whole Elon Musk thing.
Well, I think he's got a nerve in the first place. In the second place, that was not a Nazi salute, okay?
Right.
Elon Musk is not a Nazi. He's not an anti-Semite. There is nothing about what he did that resembled a Nazi symbol. It is a lie that is being spread by the anti-Trump campaign and also the anti-billionaire campaign. And by the way, the Democrats who are spreading that lie themselves, they also have a nerve since they have plenty of billionaires. They are billionaires themselves. So, it's kind. But in any case, Elon Musk, you want to criticize Elon Musk, go right ahead. When you start throwing epithets like that at someone who there is no indication whatsoever that he has any sympathies with what they call the extreme right. It's ridiculous, and it's only intended to sling mud at Trump and Trump supporters.
Yeah, it seems that way, right? It seems like it's very targeted. What I thought was just rich was the comments about anti-Semitism and how they take such a hardline approach, which was really funny. Funny but not funny, And Ruthie Blum, overall, I want to get your sense on anti-Semitism. I think we saw it reach a fever pitch. At least I'd never seen as much of it as I have in the last, I'm going to say, couple of years, 3 years or so. Do you feel that the same, and do you think it's gotten better?
Well, I'll tell you, it certainly has reared its ugly head, and that is thanks to the marriage of the left with radical Islamists, which is also in itself an amazing phenomenon, since the left prides itself on being on loving all people, and you realize that gays are tarred and feathered in any place where radical Islam reigns and rules. So, it's kind of amazing that these groups have joined forces. But then again, if you have a common enemy, and the common enemy is the Jews, I guess it works. Now, the most surprising thing was the real explosion of anti-Semitism after October 7th. Logic would have it that the opposite should have happened, which is to say sympathy, empathy with what happened on October 7th, this horrific massacre of women, children, babies, beheadings, rapes, arson, and kidnapping. Now, you would think that this might be an eye-opener for people to say, wow, look at the savages attacking civilized people. But no, what happened was it unleashed an even greater amount of anti-Semitism, and in places that are highly unexpected, like the United States, like Australia. Would you have ever thought a few years ago that anti-Semitism would be sweeping across college campuses in this open, blatant way? I wouldn't have. I grew up until I moved to Israel in 1977. Up until that time, It's true I grew up in New York, which is a very Jewish city, but, I didn't experience anti-Semitism. This is outrageous and shocking that in this country, in the United States, it should explode in this way. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that President Trump intends to tackle it, and we can trust him because he signs bills like that, and he did when he was president. He actually addressed it in a way that the Biden administration totally ignored it. So I have faith that this incoming administration will be helpful and will enact laws against it and will take care of the campuses in a way that they've been allowed. Look what's happened on these college campuses where students are allowed to stage these Intifada demonstrations. It's unthinkable, and I don't think that it's going to be allowed to proceed that way.
I hope it's not allowed to proceed that way, but do you feel that there is a desire for that to end from every angle? I feel like people don't want to do that. I feel like that was artificially propped up over the last few years. That kind of gave rise to those that are Israel haters. But I don't think that was the genuine sentiment of everybody everywhere. So my hope, or at least my expectation, is that we'll see a little bit less of it. Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm pie in the sky dreaming over here?
No, I think you're right. And I think that the real culprit here is intersectionality. You have all these groups fantasizing that they are victims of some kind, right? It's victims of every kind. It could be gay, women, name it. Okay, the Black Lives Matter, the Students for Justice in Palestine. Listen, they're a well-oiled, highly funded machine. And the useful idiots who follow along with that, I don't think that they're serious or they even know what they're talking about, because we have heard, we've witnessed that many students chanting from the river to the sea, for example, when they're asked which river and which sea, they don't even know. So I'm sure you're right that it's not as widespread as it appears, but it does need to be nipped in the bud. And I really think that some of these new executive orders that Trump has been signing, furiously signing, I think it's going to help, because we've got to take all that stuff off the campuses, out of the schools, and he's already firing all the DEI employees in the federal government. So, that's already a good sign.
Full speed ahead, Ruthie Blum, full speed ahead. Folks, I want to make sure you have a chance to follow Ruthie Blum. Ruthie, let them know about your podcast and how they can follow you.
Okay, well, you can follow me on jns.org. There I write articles and also the podcast and much other great content on jns.org. But also on YouTube, my podcast is called Israel Undiplomatic. It's on Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts or watch them. And my co-host is Mark Regev, who is the former Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Outstanding. Ruthie Blum, I want to thank you for giving us that update, and I hope to speak with you again really soon.
Thank you so much, Rich, and I hope to speak to you soon as well.
You bet. God bless you. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and a couple of other comments that I've got for you. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
That, of course, is Larry King, the legend himself, talking about open phones across America. Open phones here on the program, and the number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Or if you are an old school listener and want to chime in on the old legacy line, you're able to do that. The great Jimbo Hannon, 86650-JIMBO. So you can also, that's always, we never retired that line because out of respect for him. So feel free to do that as well. Let me hit the phones. Let's go to Boise, Idaho, KBOI in the building. Let's go to Paul. Paul, what's up, brother? Paul going once. Paul going twice. I think Paul is not available. Fell asleep, put us on hold, went to run an errand. I don't know. But you know what? Last night was the Liberty Ball, and there was a lot of things happening. And one of the things that was happening was the rapper Nelly was performing at the Liberty Ball. And I wanted to go. I wanted to see him, but I had gotten an invitation from the Trump people to go to the Truth Social Rumble party hosted by Devin Nunes and Dan Bongino, with surprise appearances by lots of other people. And it was a toss-up, and they were at the same time, and I couldn't RSVP to both. So I ended up with the one. And honestly, I don't think I had, with the group I was with, I couldn't have gotten all of those people into the to the other ball. So we opted with that, and man, it was a good decision. I missed Nelly, but I was able to have a really good time. You know, we hung out for a little bit. Russell Brand, the actor, the British guy. I think he's British. Maybe he's Australian. I think he's British. And he was married to Katy Perry. He was really, really funny. Nice guy. Anyway, more on that in the subsequent hour. But I want to tell you about Nelly, because I didn't get to see the performance. And, you know, he's the one who's got that iconic song, "It's Getting Hot in Here, so take off all your clothes." You probably heard it. Anyway, he came under fire after he said he was going to be performing at President Trump's Liberty Ball, and he fired back at these people. Listen to this.
I thought you was riding with me because I put on for my city, and I try to bring my city up every step of the way. I did not know you was riding with me because you thought I would ride for who you voted for. I didn't know that. I apologize. I apologize. I didn't know that I had to agree with your political choices, and I thought it was the things that you do, not the things that you say should be done. If you follow what I do, this shouldn't even be an argument. He's the president. He won. This isn't a campaign. This isn't an RNC. I'm not out on the political campaign. I didn't get none of that 1.5. You see what I'm saying? Like, to try to help somebody get voted.
Kamala didn't invite you to perform?
No. She didn't invite me.
She didn't invite me either, man. I was going to do all at home.
There he is. He said Kamala did not invite him. I love it. I love the honesty. I love the willingness to answer the question forthright, right? Because that's the truth. I think a lot of people cow in these moments, right? They cower to what is happening when people come out and say, "How could you do that?" You know, how could he not? Right? We have to restore the idea that it is an honor to perform at a presidential inauguration. And listen, if I were a musician and Joe Biden were to say, "Hey, listen, I'm a big fan of yours. Would you play?" I would probably decline. But I wouldn't be like, F you, middle finger, Joe. I mean, at that point, I would have said, look, I think we have some political differences that prevent us from really seeing eye to eye on this, and I'm not going to be able to make it. But I really thank you. I respect your office. Send him a nice letter, or call him, or shake his hand. I wouldn't be rude. I would just be honest and say, no, thank you. And really, it all depends. I mean, let's just say I was broke and facing child support and going to jail. then maybe I would say, you know what? I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make a caveat when I do it. And I'm going to say, look, Joe Biden and I are worlds apart on our politics, but he is the commander-in-chief. However, I probably would say something like by hook or by crook. Man, I'd probably get in trouble for that. But I try to be diplomatic and then do my thing, because I think that's what musicians are here to do. They're supposed to do their thing. I don't think you play for the people that you like. You play for the people, right? That's just what musicians do. I probably wouldn't have any music to listen to if that were the case. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I think I'm not here to have a grudge. You have a grudge, they don't go away. You've got to try and seek peace, right? At some point, you always got to try and take a step towards peace, not a step towards permanent division. And I think that's what Noli's saying here. He's saying, look, I'm trying to represent my city, trying to do the right thing. Good for him. Happy to hear that. Anyway, folks, I might have time for another call, but I got to take a quick pause right here. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, keeping you company till midnight, 1 a.m. in some areas. And I'm happy to be with you. And the phone number, at 833-4-VALDEZ. But before we do any calls, I want to highlight this. I feel like I didn't talk enough about this, and it's probably old news by now, but I wanted to weigh in on this. TikTok, right? TikTok went dark for 5 minutes, and it came back, and people all over, at least the Instagram and TikTok, and from people in my circles, they're telling me, they're like, yeah, we know what's going on. I can't talk. Trump banned TikTok when he was president, and now he's back, and Biden banned it. And he put it back on. And so they're like, so in effect, Trump both banned and is allowing TikTok. And while I guess that statement is very broad and you can try to make it true, the reality is there's a lot of in between there, right? This TikTok thing right now is temporary. And the whole goal here is not to stop TikTok from operating, but to have an American company own it, right? And that was the same thing he said last time. That's when ByteDance came in as the big partner or whatever. So now there's some talk about who might buy it. And I asked billionaire John Catsimatidis on the show if he would buy it. He said he's not buying it. Elon Musk hasn't weighed in on that just yet. But President Trump did. Listen to this.
Are you open to Elon buying TikTok? Are you open to Elon buying TikTok?
I would be if he wanted to buy it, yeah.
And on your inauguration,
I'd like Larry to buy it, too. I have the right to make a deal. So the deal I'm thinking about, Larry, let's negotiate in front of the media. The deal, I think, is this, and I've met with owners of TikTok, the big owners. It's worthless if it doesn't get a permit. It's not like, oh, you can take the U.S. The whole thing is worthless. With a permit, it's worth like $1 trillion. So what I'm thinking about saying to somebody is buy it and give half to the United States of America, half, and we'll give you the permit.
That's it. We'll give you the permit. He's making a deal. He's a deal maker. It's the art of the deal. El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president and the 47th. All right, folks, we'll continue that discussion and a whole lot more. Take it, all of your calls, open phones across America, all live calls for the next hour. Make sure you're locked in for that. It's Rich Valdez, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy to be here with you. Another hour of programming, and our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. What did I want to talk about? Well, I've got so much. I want to talk about a number of things, and we've discussed a lot, but I'm going to start with this, because I feel like it's a great place to start. We're going to do some Trump reactions because there's been plenty of them, right? Yesterday, the big day, you've got President Donald Trump, Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, taking his oath of office, which was just fantastic, right? He did the one speech, he did the second speech, then he went and did the big stadium speech. I mean, really just a busy day for the guy. And I think every day is a busy day like that. But he weighs in on a number of things. Had a great news conference today. Tackled every topic. I mean, really, every topic. Talked about wildfires in California. Talked about Musk buying TikTok. Talked about sanctions for Russia. They're on the table if Putin doesn't cooperate. The future of the H-1B visa. He talked about ceasefire in Gaza as more hostages are scheduled to be released. I mean, you name it, he's talking about it, and I want to really have that conversation with you guys as well. But something that happened today was this inaugural prayer service, right? The inaugural prayer service. It's part of the pomp and circumstance of the inauguration and onboarding process for new presidents, and in his case, re-entering presidents, and this is interesting, right? This woman, Marianne Edgar Buddy, she's the bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, D.C., and she's at their inaugural prayer service today, and she says that children that identify as LGBTQ, migrants that entered the country illegally, and others are scared at the presidency of Donald Trump. And she paused her service, her homily, her message to say this to Trump in the church.
In the name of our God.
It was something that I felt was really just, man, way over the top. But I want you to be the judge of that. Listen to this.
I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country.
I want to start it right from the beginning because she starts invoking the name of God.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away.
Yeah, she's afraid, right? She's afraid. She's saying these kids are afraid that their parents will be taken away. Is this the place for this? Now, I'm really asking that from earnestly, right? From a real position of I believe that people that serve in the ministry have a responsibility to discuss issues that affect people. Now, if the question is, do I think this person should serve in the ministry, is a different question. But this person is in that capacity in this scenario. And I think you've got to talk about what's on the table. It's kind of like my radio show. People say, what do you talk about? And they ask me, it's a political show? I talk about politics every day, but I don't think this is a political show. This is a talk show about a lot of things. Typically, I respond the news of the day. It's news commentary. We talk about what happened today. And a lot of that is political. My background's political, so I have a little bit of a political lens that I look through. But we talk about it all, right? I try to talk about what's going on in popular culture and how that affects things, and we try to tie it all up and get your thoughts, people calling from all over the country. So my point is, I can't fault this bishop of the Episcopal Church, which is she's operating within the confines of their church, and that's what they allow. I can't fault her for saying what was on her mind. I think this was just one of those things, right, where Trump was there. He was scheduled to be there. And he came. He was a gentleman about it. Do I think it was couth? Did she do that? Was it the best thing to do, the best way to approach it? Likely not, but I don't think she was disrespectful either. I think she was direct and she was blunt and she has a differing viewpoint. And that's fine. And, I give him tons of credit for not responding, really, because what are you going to do? You're gonna get into an argument with a LGBTQ bishop from a church that accepts LGBTQ? I mean, that sounds like a losing battle to me, right? There's certain pissing matches I think you just don't want to get into, and that's one of them. But El Trompito actually was asked about this upon exiting the church, and I think his response was brilliant.
What did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the
What did you think of the service?
What did you think? Did you like it? Did you find it exciting? Not too exciting, was it? I didn't think it was a good service, no. Thank you very much.
Class act. Not very exciting. He put it very nicely. He also made a similar comment. He said the media is very corrupt. During his third or second inaugural address yesterday, he said the media, that there's a lot of corrupt people, right? He said he said these are corrupt people. And then he said, hold on, we're dealing with a new system here. He said these are very bad people. And he tried to catch himself and correct himself. He's obviously operating in a new system. And I like his new system because I think it's not always worth the effort of getting into every fight that's picked with you. I only know this from experience. I used to take every fight that they gave me. Sometimes you have to learn how to stay above the fray and just, kind of chill a little bit. So anyway, I want to get to your calls and your reaction to this stuff and a lot more. We got a lot to cover. The number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Love your show, everything you do. So what an honor, really, to join you and your listeners tonight.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, and I want to continue with your calls and more. Let's go to the middle of the country, check in with Ken in Lansing, Michigan on WILS. Ken, how are you, sir?
Good evening, my Latino radio brother.
Yes, sir.
Before I get to what I told Alex, I want to give a compliment to our great president. The first 25 minutes that he spoke after being sworn in, he spoke so articulate, so on point, not looking at nothing, straight out of his mind, never stuttered, never staggered, just incredible, articulate words of wisdom for us Americans. Thank you, God, for our Donald Trump. But what I've talked to Alex about, Rich, is
amen to that.
You don't wish bad things upon decent people. You just don't. I mean, it's just not. That isn't how the world goes. So, in saying that, all them Hollywood types of Malibu and the Pacific Palisades type people are the most liberal people in Los Angeles. They're all rich. They're all very rich. They can't even pay attention enough to what's going on around them because they just think their great government's going to take care of them. Well, they found out how much that great government took care of them when their reservoir of 120 million gallons was bone dry for a year. 200 fire hydrants have been stolen off the city property. 80 of their 180 fire trucks are in disrepair and in the boneyard. Their mayor leaves during a critical time of the year when expected high winds are coming, knowing the issues they're having with the fire department. And these people, I hope, you know what, Rich, sometimes you got to get kicked real hard in the teeth before you can go to the mirror and say, you know what, by God, my ideology is wrong. I've been thinking wrong. I've been taught to think wrong. But common sense has to prevail at the end of the day. And I'm hoping it's going to turn some of them people around in both the right way the next time so they don't have people letting them down that they think is doing such a great job. America, have a great night with our new president.
Thank you, Ken. And, you know, here's what I'll say to that. I think, obviously, I don't wish any bad on anybody. And I don't want to see anybody suffer. And obviously, also, there are good people everywhere, right? It sounds like Trump, there's good people on both sides. But the reality is there is, right? The other day I spoke with somebody that I knew lived in Los Angeles, but does a lot of traveling. And I just didn't expect, for whatever reason, in my mind, I thought I had heard from them saying, you know, we've evacuated, we're good. And sent them a work-related text, and they responded that they were evacuating. And I thought, wow, it didn't even occur to me that you were, you know, still in this. And this is a you know, very, very, very decent person. So what I say is, well, you might get a lot of liberals in those areas, like say in New Jersey, right? I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I live in Jersey now, and about 4 miles from Times Square. And I'll tell you this, I'm a pretty conservative guy, I think. And there's a lot like me out there. Maybe not the majority, but there's a few. And it would be unfair to say, oh, you guys in Jersey, you get what you deserve, you know, or you people in New York, you get what you deserve. I mean, New York has produced some extraordinary patriots. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Sean Hannity, right? Bill O'Reilly. These are just a handful that are just coming to mind that I know I've been listening to forever. And I say that to say I get your point, though. And these actors, a lot of them have chimed in saying exactly that. And I don't think it's just they that have gotten your point. Ken, I think that there's a lot of people that have truly bought into that in this election. And that's why you have so many people that are like, look, I'm not a Republican, but I voted for Trump. You know, I didn't vote for Trump last time, but I voted for him this time. Because they realized this was the guy that they needed to get the most done. Punto y final, period, the end. That's really the only way to look at it. And you're right. We should all be grateful for this new administration and the direction that the country is going to go in. I, for one, am stoked. I'm excited. I can't wait. And at the same time, I think people need to learn, right? You're right. They get shocked by their decisions, and they go, man, this isn't working anymore. It's time to do something new. Ken in Lansing on WILS. Thank you for your call, my friend. Now, I also wanted to get into a little bit of what happened with this clip of audio. I'm going to wait till we come back from the next break to play that one for you, because I think it's interesting. This is juxtaposition. You got Trump weighing in on the hostages, as well as some additional reporting on what's going on with the hostages. But something that I think is important had to hit the cough button. Something that I think is important to discuss today is some of the other comments that Trump made, right? And one of the things that he was talking about today in his press conference, stand by, was, hold it, you got to bear with me. I was in the car for a long time and my mouse isn't scrolling as quickly as it should. And I lost my place. Here we go. He talked about Musk. He talked about TikTok. He talked about January 6th. And I want to talk about this right here, this wildfires. And I may not have time for everything, but listen to number 23.
You also talk about some sort of a trade or a deal involving wildfire relief in extension for a debt.
Well, what I really want to have done, I was talking about this with the guys back in the Oval Office. Los Angeles has massive amounts of water available to it. All they have to do is turn the valve, and that's the valve coming back from and down from the Pacific Northwest, where millions of gallons of water a week and a day, even in many cases, pours into California, goes all through California down to Los Angeles, and they turned it off. It's off now. The valve goes, it turns toward the Pacific Ocean, and all that water goes pouring into the Pacific Ocean. If they did what I told them to do, they wouldn't do it because politically they didn't think it was good. I think it's great politically. I think they're dead politically. What they've done, they've destroyed the city. What they've done to that city is unbelievable. The sprinklers, their sprinklers in there like these right here that you see, none of them had any water in them. They didn't have any water. The fire hydrants, 40% of them had no water. The brush was just dry. Everything was dry. The sprinklers on the lawn weren't allowed to even be used. So, everything was dry, and it was an inferno. They created an inferno. So we're demanding that they turn the valve back toward Los Angeles right now. It's not even believable that they haven't done it. Just so you know, they have a valve, and it turns like, think of a sink, but multiply it times many thousands of times the size of it. It's massive. And you turn it back toward Los Angeles. Why aren't they doing it? They either have a death wish, they're stupid, or there's something else going on that we don't understand. But we want the water that they're throwing away to be used for California.
Yep, I want that to happen too. And listen, thought out response, right? Very well thought out. Why won't Gavin Newsom do it? Well, we're going to get your thoughts on that, plus an update on the hostages and so much more, H-1B visas, and whatever else you guys want to bring to the table. 833-4-VALDEZ. It's open phones across America with me, Rich Valdez, on America at Night.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Each hostage was handed a brown paper bag when handed over to the Red Cross. You might think these were the hostages' personal items, but inside were so-called souvenirs, photos of the hostages during captivity, a commemorative image of Gaza, and a certificate stamped with Hamas's crest. Hamas didn't explain the bags, but the gesture has sparked debate. Some say it's psychological manipulation, a reminder of the group's power over the hostages.
That is a report from news.com in Australia. Each of the freed hostages given a Hamas quote-unquote parting bag. Crazy, right? I mean, I guess they're trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do. But President Trump responding to what's going on with the hostages and giving us a little bit of a forecast. Listen to Trump.
Update on the Gaza ceasefire. Are you planning to travel to the Middle East soon?
We're thinking about going to the Middle East, not yet. We have a thing called the hostages are coming back going on right now, and they are coming back. Some of them have been very damaged. You look at the young lady with her hand practically blown off. You know how that happened, right? Did you know how that happened? When you find out, you're not going to be too happy because it was terrible. But the hostages are starting to come back. If I weren't here, they wouldn't be back ever. They would have never come back. They would have all died. If this were done a year earlier, if Biden would have done this deal a year and a half, 2 years ago, or frankly, it should have never happened. October 7th should have never happened. Nobody should be dead. But through weakness, they allowed it to happen, and then it was a disaster from them. But you go back just 6 months ago, many of these young people were living. Young people don't die like that. They're just dying. And young people aren't dying at 22 and 23 years old. They don't die. But now they're dying, and you wonder why they're dying. They're being killed, and they have been killed. But they say 6 months ago, you would have had 11 more living hostages. Think of that. 6 months ago. But Biden couldn't get it done, and it was only the imposition that I put on as a deadline that got it done. But it's a very sad situation.
It's a very sad situation, and I'm glad that it's coming to an end. It doesn't mean it's any less sad, right? Doesn't, and for either side, honestly. I don't want to see any more people getting killed, period. And I think Trump was famously applauded for saying that not that long ago, when he said, I just want to see that people stop getting killed. And that's right, because ultimately that's really what it's about. It's the human life and to stop the evil. But before I go down that rabbit hole of good versus evil, because we could do that all day, a little bit of an update, right? So, apologies for being a little bit lackluster tonight. I spent about 4.5 hours in the car, with a little traffic coming back from D.C. to New York area, and man, it was hectic. It was hectic. Drained me. I was just telling Count Delacula during the break that I went to a party every night I was there and felt fine. Put me in a car for 4.5 hours driving, and I'm like, oh, man, I need a vacation. I need a break from the ride. That stuff really drains me. But really, really was good. And again, I think I mentioned it yesterday, but again, another quick thank you to the America First Policy Institute and their inaugural ball at the Waldorf Astoria. Fantastic venue in D.C. Used to be the Trump Hotel in D.C., the old post office. And absolutely stunning event, beautiful event. There was a live eagle and a bald eagle, American eagle. So like the equivalent of the red carpet. When you stop to take your photo, you could take a photo with the eagle in the shot. I mean, tell me you've been to a party where they had one of those. Absolutely incredible. The folks at America First Policy Institute, AFPI, and we bring a number of their guests on this program as well, they know how to throw a party. Let me tell you, it was absolutely terrific. Absolutely terrific. Let me see. And who did we see there? Just to give you a recap. We cabinet folks. We saw Secretary Burgum there. He was terrific. Vivek Ramaswamy. We also saw Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who is former Congressman Sean Duffy, his wife Rachel Campos Duffy from the Fox News Channel, and his daughter, who's been on this program a couple of times, Evita Duffy. Fantastic family. They were very, very nice. Just a number of wonderful people. Also attended the Garden State inaugural ball from the New Jersey Society. Compliments to them and my buddy Assemblyman Robert Auth, who's a regular on this program. He was on yesterday. Visited their ball. Very nice, also very nice. The music was a little oldies, like doo-wop all night long, and I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that. My mom loved doo-wop, but it was like just a lot. you know. I was waiting for the reggaeton to start, or a little bit of, some salsa, some merengue, some Spanish music, anything. Just really, even like Do the Hustle. But it was just like doo-wop all night long. Like, the lion sleeps tonight type of thing. A wee ma whip, a wee ma whip. So it really wasn't my vibe on the music there. But it was nice. It was nice. Joe Piscopo came by that one. Shout out to Joe Piscopo. And let me see. There was another one. Oh, we went to the Trump Media Technology Group after party. That was great with Devin Nunes and Dan Bongino. Shout out to Dan Bongino and Devin Nunes. Good people. Chris Pavlovsky, the CEO of Rumble. Met a lot of great people there. And it was a good time. That's where Russell Brand was. And he was a nice guy. I said hello. I said, hey, brother, good to see you, man. I love what you're doing. God bless you. He gave me a big hug. And he said, oh, I love that. Real nice, salt of the earth kind of guy. And trying to give you the fill-in on so much of how it went down in the inauguration and the accompanying balls. And more than anything, the energy that was all over D.C. and just a lot. Now, what I will say, the takeaways that were like, I could do without that. It was 18 degrees most of the time, at least yesterday, day before, today, all that. Cold. Then you had the other 2 days that were, Friday and Saturday, were not so bad, Sunday even, but they were gridlocked. Why? Because they built these big enclosures. It looked like a steel cage match for WWE, and they put it right in front of the hotel I was at, where they were, doing like live TV shows and stuff, and it was crazy. You couldn't order an Uber or any type of ride share. You had to walk 4, 5, 6 blocks. So if you were pulling up to the hotel, you had to, schlep your luggage. Crazy. It was a lot. That part of it was a lot. And it was cold, so who'd want to walk in the cold? But outside of that, it was a fantastic time. And there were so many others, live performances, great bands. I mean, I saw a lot. I'm pretty sure I'm leaving. I attended the Heritage Foundation event with Steve Moore and Art Laffer. Big shout out to them. And I was looking for E.J. Antoni, couldn't find him anywhere. So I'm going to make sure we, if you haven't heard my interview with E.J. Antoni about tariffs, we're going to play that for you in a little bit in case you missed it. And if you did, then great. I'm glad you did. The forum, the colloquia they had was very good. And a great facility there as well for Heritage Foundation. And what else? Oh, and then compliments to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Hungary. Compliments of Prime Minister Viktor Orban. It was a reception at the Hungarian embassy that I was invited to. And let me tell you, the Europeans, they've got this figured out. They've realized that it's a man and a woman that are the centerpiece of the family unit. I think we all knew that, but they are putting it in practice. This idea is not a foreign one in Hungary. It's the only one in Hungary, right? They don't accept the rhetoric. They don't take the pushback from the left. And this is why they're successful in building these conservative coalitions and these conservative political parties that are all over Hungary. So shout out to Viktor Orban and our buddy Brian Leib from Henry PR. Used to be with Iranian Americans for Liberty. He was at that event also, as well as Eli Kohanim. Assemblyman Robert Auth as well was there from the New Jersey legislature. Mercedes Schlapp. I saw Mercedes Schlapp. And she took a selfie. Mercedes, if you're listening, you took a selfie. You never sent it to me. Matt has my number. Send it over. It was a great picture. I looked so good. My hair was perfect, perfectly coiffed. And it was on her phone, and I don't have it. I wanted to share that one with you all, the listeners, because I know a lot of people were asking me, what did you do? Who'd you see? How did it go? And it really was really, really nice events, a lot of events. I'm blessed to have been a part of that. It's my second inauguration. I was at the inauguration of the 43rd president of the United States, George W. Bush. And actually back then I was married. And after, the first dance at the ball, at the inaugural ball, the president is asked to have his first dance with his wife, the first lady. And that happened. Right at the time, it was George W. Bush and Laura. And then Dick Cheney and his wife. And then they opened up the dance floor for everyone else. And I was dancing not 5 feet away from Dick Cheney and his wife, and George and Laura had moved a little bit further away, maybe about 10 feet down, as the opposite end of the dance floor. But I got to tell you, it was a grand experience. I was in my early 20s, and it was terrific. 20 years ago today, right? It was 2005, January 20th, 2005. So anyway, just to say what a great experience, and to be able to do it full circle now with a new mandate, a president who's been elected twice, 3 times, I would argue, but twice in 2 separate terms, like Grover Cleveland was, being the only second president to ever do that. I think that's amazing. And I'm so grateful to have been a part of that and been there for that in this part of history. And to see how it's grown, right? To see how, in one inauguration, I was there on the dance floor with the president, vice president, their wives, and along with all the other attendees at the ball. And now here you have, I don't know, had to be at least 50 balls and other types of parties and events that were going on in honor of the election of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. So that was really cool. Anyway, folks, I'm going to take a quick pause right here to leave a little time for your calls. We're going to get to your calls momentarily. I see Doc in Wilmington, Delaware is on the line. I see lines flashing. So we're going to come right back to you guys. Open phones across America. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company till midnight, 1 o'clock. It's open phones across America. Looking forward to speaking with you, all the American people. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's hit the phones. I want to go to Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL, and check in with one of Joe Biden's distant neighbors, Doc in Wilmington. Welcome, sir. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, my liberty loving amigo and my brother. Happy New Year.
It's been a while. I've missed you. Make sure you call in earlier. We have a couple of changes. And I'm taking more calls in this hour as opposed to the following.
Okay. All I want to say is one thing. I want your reaction to what I'm saying.
Sure.
As I told Dom Giordano last night, I'm going to tell you. Yeah. I think what President Trump has to do is do what President Nixon said. In the election, you run to the right. In the general and the governing, you run to the center. I think President Trump has to be far right in certain areas, civil liberties. I think he has to be, however, more of a moderate in other areas. I don't think that he has to be tied to one issue, except for what he's tied to: immigration, which is strong, border, which is strong, national security strong, and trade, which is strong, jobs. He hit the keynote in his inaugural address. I got choked up. I'm a union retiree here in Delaware, going back to school to get a college degree, finish college degree, and
good.
I know what's going on in Delaware and in the nation on our campuses. He has to fight that. He's preserving jobs in America. I want him to be more moderate to lay a framework for J.D. Vance in 2028 and beyond. What are your thoughts on that, Rich?
Well, help me understand the last part again, because you went too fast for me.
I'm sorry.
The last sentence.
I want him to be on the one hand, a very conservative guy. On the other hand, a very moderate guy. So he can lay the framework for J.D. Vance in 2028. Your thoughts,
okay,
sir?
so it's a two-part question, right? About running to the right and running to the center, and then about the setup for the future. So here's what I'll answer the second part first, because I think Trump is a meritocracy kind of guy, right? If you ever watched his show, The Apprentice, he was all about giving everybody a shot and choosing the best person to be the apprentice, right? And it was all about these series of challenges he would give them, and he would give them supervisors, project managers, and they would go at it. And, may the best man win type of thing. And he would assess these things, and he would judge them on many different things. It wasn't one criteria, even though they had one specific goal. So, sometimes he'd say, look, you may have missed the goal, but you really shined here as a leader. And he would work with that. And the pastor at my church says you got to find the gold in people. I've kind of changed that around and said you got to become a gold digger, right? You become a gold digger to find the gold in people. And I think Trump does that. He figures out how to find the gold in people. Now, that being said, I don't think that Trump sees it as his job to pave the way for J.D. Vance. I think Trump sees it as, hey, I just won this election after being shot at, after being nearly jailed, after being wrongly prosecuted. And if I can do it, you all can do it. And guess what? You've got a head start by serving as vice president in this administration. But I don't think for a second that there are not competitors like Ron DeSantis, who's going to be term limited out soon. Others that were clearly interested in running for president last time. Larry Elder, Vivek Ramaswamy, and others that, made their intentions clear. So I think, I would suspect that there's going to be a primary when this is over, unless it's, for certain. But, it won't be an incumbent. If you have J.D. Vance saying, hey, look, I'm going to run, I think it's good for him. But I don't know that he would go unchallenged. I think there's a lot of people that wanted to run this time around, and some made their voices known, others no. So you've got Vivek that is going to run for governor of Ohio. I would presume he's not going to walk away from being governor to run for president. I don't think that would be a good look, right? So he'll likely, like DeSantis, he's going to finish his time as governor and then run. So he's going to be accounted for a while. But there are others that are going to be available. So that's my thought. The other part of it, I think Trump runs the way he wants. He doesn't go to the right or to the center either way. I think he has his positions, and he's always willing to cut a deal because he's a deal maker. And I think that's the pragmatic approach to politics that we all need. When you take my position, right, my uncompromising position, like absolutely not, abolish this, get rid of that, and let's get rid of the income tax. These are my wish list items, but guess what? They haven't happened yet. So I realize you get a lot more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Doc in Wilmington, Delaware, thank you for your call, my friend. I appreciate you. Godspeed to you. Make sure you keep calling in and calling in early. And that goes for everybody else as well. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez, keeping you company. And I want to talk about tariffs. We're going to get into a conversation on tariffs. If you haven't heard my conversation with with EJ Antoni, keep it locked right here for that. We're going to get into that. Plus, I want to remind everybody, open phones across America. We're doing it an hour earlier, so you got to call in just an hour earlier than you normally do, so I can accommodate all of the calls. I appreciate it. 833-4-VALDEZ. Do it an hour earlier. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.